So in your probably early experiences with meditation, can you recall any key moments when you realized experientially that, whoa, this is shifting the nature of my experience in a way I hadn't expected?
Probably the first key moment came a few months into the practice when I started to notice that at the end of a hour sit, the voice that had always been screaming in my head, although it was still present, it was like at a distance. It wasn't screaming anymore. I didn't have to listen to it instantly. I'd never experienced anything like that. It was like the internal talk, by the end of a sit, the internal talk hadn't gone away, but it was like at a distance. It was muffled. That was a whole new world for me. So I went to my teacher and I said, my sitting's getting interesting. And he said, oh, in what way? And I described this phenomenon. And he said, oh, that's good. You're starting to go into samadhi, into a state of high concentration. So then he said, now you have anything that you experience on the cushion, you must eventually be able to experience in daily life. And I thought, this is crazy. I could barely get a little hint of that quieting of internal talk after an hour of focusing on my breath. How can I possibly maintain this in daily life? And he said, well, you can. Just do it. That was a pivotal experience. Like, that was really new and something that who would have ever thought that was possible for someone like me to experience even a few moments of quiet, of internal self-talk. I would say the second dramatic thing that ever happened to me came at the end of my first week-long Zen retreat in Japan, which was this horrific killer ordeal. It was in the summer. The very first night, they broke 3 sticks over people.
Oh my goodness.
The mosquitoes were like an inch long. They could bite you through your clothes. And it was like, Japan is very moist, so in summer you're just like sweating, right? And you're not allowed to move at all, no matter what. And by the way, this is a good example of what I mean by horrific ordeals that I would like people not to have to go through.
Right.
By working smart with, precise vocabulary. But because if we talk about this, people say, hey, who would ever put themselves through they don't see themselves in that scenario. So you don't have to do this kind of thing. But the first time I did do that kind of thing, by the end, I nearly had lost my marbles. I was starting to have insane ideation, literally insane thoughts, like a torture victim, basically. Mm. And my whole body was shaking, with pain. And I thought I was going to cry. I was sure I was just going to start bawling. And it was the last sit of the last day. And I was just holding on. I mean, my whole body was shaking, and I was just holding on for dear life. And I realized I was about to cry, but not just cry, I mean bawl, like break down. And I started to scream in my talk space, you're not a baby, don't cry. You're not a baby, don't cry, like that over and over again. And suddenly, for no reason, I dropped into equanimity, big time. It wasn't just the quiet, that I described before. My entire being dropped into a spontaneous equanimity. The way you know that's happened is the pain level is exactly the same, but the suffering level dramatically reduces or perhaps even goes away. And in this particular instance, the suffering completely went away. So I went from near fainting level of pain to my body totally relaxed. Yes, the internal talk turned off, and the pain turned into a kind of flowing energy that was just massaging my being. And it was like I could have stayed there forever. The physical body was literally breaking up into a flow of spirit. And then the bell rang that ended that sit. I was never the same because, you know, you can hear somebody say this, but if you haven't experienced it, why should you believe it? And I would have never believed that that could be the case. So that was extremely dramatic. A few years later, one day at the end of a day, I sat down. I hadn't meditated that day. I was doing self-inquiry at that time, asking, who am I? And at the end of the day, I sat down and I said, who am I? I looked at my boundaries, and they vanished. And they never came back. And I was never the same, ever. I didn't sit, I just got up. I got up, I just started to walk around and communicate with the walls. And they were like me. And so was the whole world. And next morning, you know, when I went to bed that night, I thought, well, that's going to go away. You know, it's like, woke up the next morning, it was there. And it never went away, ever. My whole life. I've been privileged to
How
live.
long ago was that?
That was after I meditated for about 4 years. So it's been 40 years now. So that was like 35, 36 years ago. And it has nothing to do with how concentrated you are. It just is. And that was obviously a huge watershed. Yeah, that's what gives me the confidence to teach.